Angela. I'm here with the other 11th grade class today, so I'm going to give you a little visual of them. You all can say hi and wave to Angela. We're hoping she will be with us sometime in September, so that'll be great when she's finally here. She's anxious to get here as well. So, okay, that's still recording. That's good. Close the doors in case it gets loud. So I asked you to write the definition of the definitions of theist, atheist, and pantheist. Could have put agnostic in there as well. But what is, and you do have your glossary, and you can look at that if you wish. In fact, I meant to bring my glossary up. So what is an atheist? How would we define, or excuse me, a theist? How would we define the term theist? Yes.
One who believes in a personal God who created the universe.
Yes. Someone who believes in a personal God who created the universe and everything in it. At the same time, that God would have to exist outside of his creation, or else he would be part of the created order. So he's not physically part of the universe, but he does interact with the universe. So that is a theist, someone who believes in that. What about an atheist? What is an atheist? Hannah.
Someone who doesn't believe in God.
Right. Someone who does not believe in any type of God, that any type of God exists. And then what about a pantheist? Landon.
Believes that God is everything.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So someone who believes that God is the universe, that would be an impersonal God that exists in every part of the universe, including the rocks, trees, you, me, everything. So somebody who thinks everything is God, or God is everything, or everything is a part of God. Something along those lines. Any questions on that? An agnostic. What's an agnostic? Yeah, then. Yeah. Well, it's that would be more more pantheistic. So an agnostic doesn't know if there's a God. Does not. I can give you the glossary term for it. And there are two kinds of agnostic. It's the person who says, if you say, is there a God? And they say, I don't know. Technically, that person is an agnostic. They don't know whether there is a God or not. And that generally is going to be someone who hasn't really, investigated the possibility of God. So someone who's unsure whether or not God exists. Now, there's another kind of agnostic who says there may be a God, there may not be a God, but ultimately, even if there is a God, that God is unknowable. So you can't know if there's a God or if there isn't. And that's, I don't know. Word for you for someone who's happy and well. Okay, so look at this thing about Carl Sagan. We're going to compare and contrast two famous men. And so one is Carl Sagan. Both, by the way, are no longer living. One is Carl Sagan, and the other one is C.S. Lewis. So Carl Sagan's on one side, and C.S. Lewis is on the other. Follow along with me as I read aloud to you about Carl Sagan. Born in 1934, Carl Sagan was a well-known astronomer and cosmologist. By the time he died in 1996, he had published more than 600 scientific papers. But he was best known for writing best-selling books about science and for appearing on popular television programs to expound on the wonders of the universe. As a child, growing up in a Jewish home, Sagan was inquisitive. Although his mother believed in God and was active in synagogue, she taught him to be skeptical, question and analyze the world around him. His father, on the other hand, was a quiet man who instilled in his son a sense of wonder, encouraging him to explore and discover new things. Young Carl enjoyed reading science fiction and spent as much time as he could at the library and museums trying to figure out how the world worked. Sagan attended the University of Chicago and earned several degrees, including a PhD in astronomy and astrophysics in 1960. He lectured and conducted research at Harvard before taking a position as a professor of astronomy at Cornell, where he served as associate director of the Center for Radiophysics and Space Research. From the time he was still in college, he worked as an advisor to NASA. Among his duties was briefing the Apollo astronauts and developing experiments that they would conduct in outer space. He later was active in the search for extraterrestrial life and promoted SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, a scientific organization that listens to radio noise from space for signs of intelligent life. Because of his passion for scientific discovery, Sagan wanted to popularize science so that many more people would become interested in the search for the truth about the universe. He wrote several books, including Cosmos, a companion to his 13-part television series. Both the book and the television series were huge successes. Cosmos became the best-selling science book ever published in English, and the 1980 television series has been seen by more than 500 million people around the world. Sagan also received a Pulitzer Prize for The Dragon of Eden, Speculations on the Evolution of Human Intelligence. His science fiction novel, Contact, was made into a movie starring Jodie Foster in 1997, a year after his death. Religiously, Sagan believes that the notion of God as an oversized white male with a flowing beard who sits in the sky and tallies the fall of every sparrow was ludicrous, just unbelievable stupid. Instead, he subscribed to the idea that of God as the set of physical laws that govern the universe. Sagan claimed to be an agnostic, saying an atheist has to know a lot more than I know. An atheist is someone who knows there is no God. By some definitions, atheism is very stupid. Yet he implied atheism by declaring that the cosmos, the universe, is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. Sagan was a strong promoter of skepticism, a method of reasoning that questions everything until proven conclusively by science and logic. One of his famous quotes from the Cosmos television program was that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Dr. Turk and Dr. Geisler discussed this concept in an upcoming chapter. Carl Sagan was an influential force in the scientific community during his lifetime, winning numerous scientific awards and contributing personally to the study of planetary atmospheres and exobiology. The study of effects of the extraterrestrial environments on living things. Yet his skeptical naturalistic view of the world blinded him to the existence of a person. And now C.S. Lewis. Born in Belfast, Ireland in 1898, Clive Staples Lewis, who as a boy insisted his family call him Jack, grew up with a love of books. His family home was filled with books of all kinds, stacked wherever there was space. He read voraciously a lot, and even tried his hand at writing poetry and fiction as a boy. But his idyllic childhood did not last, for Jack's mother died of cancer in 1908, and he was sent away to a series of boarding schools. At age 15, angry over the loss of his mother and influenced by secular teachers, Jack renounced the Protestant faith in which he had been raised and became an atheist. He later described his young self as being paradoxically very angry with God for not existing. This atheistic viewpoint was strengthened by his association with his private tutor, William T. Kirkpatrick, who exposed Lewis to a wide variety of classical literature. He even insisted, that Lewis learn Greek so that he could enjoy the classics in their original language. Kirkpatrick's tutelage sharpened young Jack's mind, helping Lewis earn a scholarship to Oxford University in 1917. Except for a year spent fighting in World War I, Lewis spent much of the rest of his life in Oxford. Even in later years, when he was working in Cambridge as a professor of medieval and Renaissance English, Lewis would always travel back home to Oxford on weekends. He earned high honors as a student, and he went on to teach as a fellow of Magdalen College, Oxford, where he remained for nearly 3 years. Over the next few years, Lewis came under the influence of a series of Christian thinkers, including his colleague and friend J.R.R. Tolkien. He slowly embraced Christianity, and in 1931, Lewis committed his life to Christ. This change of faith sparked a radical transformation. He began writing and lecturing as an apologist, one who defends the faith. With a sharp mind and a keen grasp of logic, he proved a formidable advocate for Christianity. Lewis lectured throughout England and was often featured on radio broadcasts. Most notably, Lewis wrote a number of classic books, including Mere Christianity, which is the Screwtape Letters, and the Chronicles of Narnia. If you're a Christian and you have not read Mere Christianity, consider your education incomplete. Near the end of his life, Lewis met Joy Gresham, an American divorcee with 2 teenage sons. Although at first attracted only to her intellect, Lewis soon fell in love, and they were married in 1956. 4 happy years later, Joy died of cancer. Lewis followed her 3 years later, passing away on November 22, 1963, the same day President John Kennedy was assassinated. Regarded as perhaps the most influential Christian apologist of his day, C.S. Lewis continues to impact skeptics and Christians alike. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by writing down things about Sagan that are different than C.S. Lewis and vice versa. So we've got Sagan over here. We've got Lewis over here. Talk to me about Sagan. What are some things that were true of him that were not true of C.S. Lewis? You can just jot them out. What?
Sagan was raised Jewish.
Yeah. So he was raised Jewish, right? He was born to a Jewish family. And what about Lewis? Yeah, probably Anglican since it was England. So he was raised in a Christian home. Okay, what else is different about him?
They had different jobs.
Okay, they had different jobs, right? So Sagan, they were both professors in a sense, but and both authors. But Sagan worked in the field of science, and Lewis worked in the field of literature, primarily, and later then as an apologist. What else? Yeah. Didn't know what?
God existed.
Right. So Sagan was a skeptic. I think they were both skeptic for a time. And he didn't call himself an atheist. He was more along the lines of an agnostic. But he did write as though he was an atheist often. What about Lewis? Yeah. He was raised in the Christian faith, but he became an atheist who eventually became a Christian. What else? Where did Sagan live? Yeah, where's that? Like what country is that? Sagan was an American, although Lewis was born in Ireland. Uh, he spent most of his life in Great Britain. He was British and spent most of his life in Oxford. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
Lewis.
Okay, yeah. So Lewis had suffered quite a bit, right? And his childhood was marred by the death of his mother. Sagan, on the other hand, by all appearances, had a fairly happy childhood. Okay, so those are the way they are different. How are they the same? Yes. Okay, so they both were atheist, agnostic, at least for a time. Okay, so at some point in their life, they both espoused the belief that there is no God, or whatever is out there, it's not knowable, it's not a personal God. What else? Yeah.
They're both professors.
They were both professors at some point in their lives. Both probably became more famous for what they wrote than for what they taught. But yes, they were both professors. They both had PhDs. They both had a lot of education. Yes.
Didn't both of them believe in God?
Right. So, and this is another thing that yeah. Okay, we did this. Yeah. So they both had believing mothers. Now, or religious mothers, maybe is a better way to put that. But Mrs. Sagan was Jewish and was apparently an Orthodox Jew, and not Orthodox in the terms of Orthodox as the type of Jew, but just a believing Jew. And C.S. Lewis's parents in general were Anglican believers in Christ. Anything else?
Both wrote books.
They both were authors, famous authors, best-selling authors. Mere Christianity really is on the short list of greatest Christian books ever written by almost anyone. It's not just. By the way, Mere Christianity was among the books that taught me I actually do like to read. I went all the way through high school thinking I just once I could read. I wanted to read. Once I figured out, like, what do you read in high school? Novels. More novels. I don't know. Unless it's Jane Austen. If it's Jane Austen, I like. I like theology. I like history. I know that's weird, but Mere Christianity was one of the books that taught me about myself. They were both brilliant men. Very educated, brilliant men. They're both highly, highly educated at some of the best schools in their countries. So we see these two men that had a lot in common. In a lot of ways, they were similar in terms of their upbringing and their education and their intellect and all of those things. And yet they end up as adults with vastly different worldviews, with a vastly different understanding of the world and everything in it. And part of why I had you go through this exercise is to see that not only does worldview matter, not only does our understanding of who we are and who we are in Christ matter, but it's going to set a trajectory, not just for your life, but for eternity. And so, just wanted to give you this picture. And you know, Carl Sagan wasn't a bad guy. I think he was a misled guy, but I don't think he was a bad guy. He was a brilliant man. So it isn't a matter of non-Christians are stupid. They may not know the truth. They may not understand the truth. But that doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. And any sort of background can lead either to walking away from faith or walking toward faith, no matter what, no matter how you were raised, no matter what your family were. Questions on any of this? I believe that's all we have for today, so we may chat. Angela?